The Pope just arrived at JFK just a few moments ago. You can see the airplane there. So he's going to go from that airplane to a helicopter. He is going to be saying an evening prayer this evening at 6:45 at St. Patrick's Cathedral here in Manhattan. So he is going to be doing that in about an hour's time. You remember earlier today in a historic address, he addressed a joint Congress earlier in D.C., so now arriving here in New York City. With that in mind, we bring in our God Squad. Father Thomas Petri joining us, Father Dominic Legg, and Rabbi Shmuley Boteach is joining me now. Father Petri, starting with you, did you agree with the Pope's comments on business?
So the Pope said that business is a noble profession and that it creates opportunities. I'm so glad that he said that because he also said it in his encyclical Laudato Si. This is an important point to remember about our Holy Father, that he's not simply critical of unbridled capitalism, but he really wants to support business as a vocation and a path to God for businessmen.
Rabbi, was that your take as well?
Oh, in today's speech, yes, but what we need to do is be careful never to glorify poverty. There's nothing holy about being poor. On the contrary, our responsibility is to lift everybody out of poverty so everyone has the means to support their families with dignity. I understand that Jesus, his ministry was directed toward the poor, but it wasn't to keep them in any position of poverty. It was to ensure that people had the economic sustenance by which to live with dignity. Now, I respect my Catholic brothers and sisters tremendously, and this Pope is a righteous, holy man, but I'm not bound by papal doctrines of infallibility because I'm not a Catholic. I'm Jewish. I'm surprised, actually, that the Pope has not said a single word about the mass slaughter of Christians throughout the Middle East. I understand that global warming is debated in this country as to whether it's an urgent issue, and I understand his position on it. But the near genocide of Christians throughout the Middle East is a much more urgent problem. He is the head of the Catholic Church. He's the world's most important religious figure, but he's also the world's most famous Christian. And Christians are being killed all over the Middle East. And the fact that that's not part of this message to a country deeply embedded in the battle in the Middle East, the war in the Middle East, is striking.
Okay, hold those thoughts because we are watching right now, as you may be as well from your screens, the Pope, who is in fact, you see him embarking there from the airport that brought him to JFK. You can hear the cheers in the background. So you see him there alighting the steps. He will be walking, if he doesn't address the crowd in some way first, he will be going right to a helicopter. As we told you, he is going to be saying evening prayers at St. Patrick's Cathedral here in Manhattan. That is scheduled to start at 6:45. So as far as scheduling goes, he is right on time. But you can see going with him, of course, the people who have accompanied him on this trip, this historic visit to the U.S. We have been talking about this mix of the message of the Catholic Church, the mix of what it means as far as global warming goes, as far as attitudes about business, about attitudes towards immigration. You heard earlier one of my guests say that he really covered quite a lot of ground earlier today. In some ways had a message almost for everyone who was willing to listen. He asked everyone, believer or not a believer, to pray for him and to work towards peace. So there he is right now, Pope Francis, as you can see, making his way through the crowd at JFK. As we mentioned, he is going to be taking a very short helicopter trip, probably about 10 or 15 minutes, into Manhattan. He's going to be giving an evening prayer service at 6:45 this evening, St. Patrick's Cathedral, Midtown Manhattan. Of course, tomorrow, as you may know, he is going to be giving a mass at Madison Square Garden to more than 30,000 people in attendance there. He is also the first Pope on U.S. soil to be visiting Spanish Harlem. That is going to be part of tomorrow's agenda as well. For the moment, though, you can see he is being greeted very warmly here at JFK International Airport, still on the tarmac there. Hopefully in the next few minutes, able to make his way over to the helicopter, which will then bring him to Manhattan. We are back with the God Squad. Father Legg, I did not get a chance to ask you what you made of the Pope's comments this morning, covering really a wide range of subjects. I feel in many ways this Pope, whether it's a task, whether it's a challenge, is part of almost the rebranding of the Catholic Church. Do you agree?
I think that's right. I think he is trying to communicate the traditional Catholic teaching, and actually everything that he said was very much in line with what Pope Benedict, Pope John Paul II have said. He's reiterating a typical Catholic doctrine, but he's doing it in a way with a kind of new overture. And he's trying to, I think, present the Catholic faith in a light that many Americans may not have heard it, in a way that allows it to be a little more attractive to them, perhaps. Certainly the way he presents it and the personal warmth that he has touched a lot of people. And I think that's made his remarks very powerful. The other thing I would add is just the spiritual dimension to what he said to Congress. That's not the normal sort of address you get there, but that was a very important part of what he said today.
In the sense that whether you are a believer or a non-believer, he had the humility to ask people to pray for him.
Oh, absolutely. And also, you know, the way he spoke to members of Congress, he spoke about being a lawmaker as a vocation that's directed to a transcendent good. Now, what is he talking about there? He's actually talking about the fact that lawmakers are supposed to be acting for the good of the whole people, and the good of the whole people ultimately has a reference even to God. Now, that's not a normal message in the Congress's, the halls of Congress, but it is something that the Pope thinks is an important dimension of speaking about our country and the way the laws should be framed.
And as far as the way the laws are, I'm going to bring you back on this, Rabbi. I heard what you said about your concern that, in your view, some comments were missing, that is to say, with what is happening in the Middle East. We talked a little bit about the attitudes towards business. What do you think about what we talk about sometimes, which is impact investing? Did you hear anything that resonated with you on that front?
Well, business is, as the Pope said, could be a very noble calling if it gives people jobs and raises them above poverty. I'm always concerned when we try to sanctify the existence of poverty, as if poverty is not something to be eradicated, but it is something to be treated, that the poor should be treated with love. On the contrary, the poor should be lifted out of poverty. Nobody wants to be poor, and our responsibility is to ensure that every person can sustain themselves in dignity. No one wants handouts, because even though it may pay our bills, it robs us of our dignity. Now, the Pope spoke a lot about immigration. The problem with the migrant issue into Europe and to the United States, we all know what the problem is. There's a dictator, murderer, butcher named Bashar al-Assad who has killed 200,000 innocent Arabs who did not deserve to die. And we need the world's foremost moral authority, Pope Francis, condemning his butchery and his slaughter.
Well,
simply saying that we should open our borders to the migrants, which we should, because we have to make sure that they don't suffer, but we have to go to the root of the problem. Religion must also condemn evil. Religion cannot just extol love. Religion cannot just extol togetherness. Religion has to identify the bad guys, the boogeymen, and say that these people are the enemies of God because they want to slaughter his children. Bashar al-Assad is the single greatest murderer in the world today. And the whole migrant issue has to do with people being displaced, millions of them, out of their homes, having to choose between being killed and having to flee with nothing on their backs, begging European countries and the United States to let them in.
Right.
Now, I'm a Jew, and I know what it's like for our people to have faced Hitler, and they had to be welcomed in. The United States did not welcome them in. So I, of course, support migrants coming into our country. Having said that, let's get to the root culture. We fought Hitler back then. Why aren't we fighting Assad? And why isn't the Pope calling for a more aggressive posture toward him?
So I hear what you're saying, Rabbi, and to your point, he did speak about, or rather against, humans committing violence against each other, but he was not specific about any particular spots on the globe that we are all paying attention to as we speak and thinking about